Have you ever pondered the unspeakable truths submerged beneath the floodwaters? Secrets so malevolent and profound that even angelic choirs dared not whisper of them. What if the demise of the giants was merely the prelude to a far greater horror? One that originated with the women who bore them. These were no ordinary women, but individuals who willingly traded obedience for forbidden desire, purity for fervent passion. They fell in love with beings from realms beyond human comprehension, fallen angels who had rebelled against the divine will, and their choices carried a terrifying price, a truth veiled in silence until now. This is not simply a story of celestial rebellion, but a chronicle of the harrowing aftermath. It unveils what transpired after the heavenly war, after the Nephilim's extermination, after the earth's cleansing. For once the floodwaters subsided, dire consequences remained, consequences so severe that only one being could deliver them: Archangel Michael, the commander of heaven's legions, the embodiment of divine justice. But the revelation that will forever alter your perspective is this: Michael's wrath was not solely directed at the fallen angels. He turned his gaze upon their human wives, the women who had consorted with darkness. His subsequent actions would scar the spiritual realm for eternity. Could echoes of their tormented souls still reverberate through time? Do they linger in folklore as sirens, luring unsuspecting mortals with voices laced with sorrow and fury? Before we delve into the full truth, if you feel the weight of this mystery tugging at your soul, leave a comment with 707. To those who support this channel with their encouragement and presence, your light illuminates the path to uncover what has long been concealed. Stay with us, for the deeper we venture, the more the veil will lift. Archangel Michael's actions were not merely a punishment, they were a prophecy. Once you hear it, ancient stories will never hold the same meaning. Are you prepared to confront the unknown? Let us begin. Archangel Michael's shocking act against the wives of fallen angels. Have you ever contemplated the immense power held within a single glance, capable of altering the course of destiny? What if a look, not from mortal eyes, but from the most powerful beings in existence, could unravel the very fabric of divine order? This is not merely a tale of forbidden love. It is the greatest tragedy of love at first sight ever recorded, an event of such gravity that it shattered the equilibrium between heaven and earth. In the celestial realms, all was pristine, harmonious, and radiant. Angels, God's messengers and warriors, diligently carried out their sacred duties, singing hymns of praise, maintaining the beauty of creation, and serving as sentinels of divine law. They were created to serve and obey, with no desire beyond the Almighty's will. Their purpose was clear, their loyalty unwavering. But then, an unforeseen shift occurred. One day, their gaze descended from the celestial heights, and their eyes beheld the earth. What they witnessed was not chaos or sin, at least not yet. Instead, they encountered beauty, unlike anything they had previously experienced. It was not the perfection of celestial beings, nor the glory of stars. It was human beauty, flawed, fragile, real, and it captivated them. The women of Earth, with their raw emotions, gentle strength, and mortal charm, stirred within the angels a longing that had never before been awakened. It was an experience beyond their comprehension. How could beings forged in light and holiness succumb to the allure of flesh and vulnerability? What was it about these women that compelled angels, eternal and wise, to forsake their very purpose? Genesis 6:2 recounts the moment when this divine boundary was breached. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves from any they chose. This moment, this initial glance, marked the beginning of a catastrophic downfall. It ignited a chain of rebellion, corruption, and ultimately, divine judgment. But the fundamental question remains: if even angels can succumb to desire, what does this reveal about the immense power of human love and the inherent dangers of loving outside of God's divine will? This is where the narrative takes a perilous and dramatic turn. The angels, once impervious to worldly temptations, began to experience something alien, something potent. It began as a subtle fascination, like a gentle whisper, but with each downward glance, that whisper grew louder, morphing into an insatiable voice. What was this peculiar pull they felt? Why did it awaken such longing in beings created to transcend desire? It was no longer simple admiration. It was craving, obsession, a fire igniting in hearts never meant to burn with earthly passion. These were not minor angels, but the sons of God, heavenly watchers, guardians of divine order. Yet, with each downward gaze, the boundaries of heaven blurred. The light that once radiated from them, pure and unwavering, began to flicker. Their glory, meant to reflect God's holiness, began to dim as forbidden thoughts infiltrated their minds. Meanwhile, down on earth, women lived their lives, blissfully unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding above. They baked bread, sang songs, tended fields, and shared stories by firelight, oblivious to the fact that their beauty, laughter, and warmth had become the downfall of the watchers in the sky. These women, in their very humanity, became the unwitting center of divine rebellion. Have you ever imagined what it would feel like to be watched, not by fellow humans, but by celestial beings? Angels meant to guard, now consumed by a desire to possess. What transpires when holy watchers break their silence, not to protect, but to pursue? As Jude 1-6 states, "And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains, under darkness, for the judgment of the great day." The heavens grew restless, the air thick with tension. A choice was imminent, a choice that would send ripples through eternity. As the angels leaned closer to the world of flesh, the skies above began to shift. The strange energy permeated beyond the celestial realm. Down on earth, an inexplicable stirring began within the women. It was neither fear nor peace, but a sense of unseen eyes upon them, watching with an intensity that transcended malice. They felt chosen, though the reason remained unknown. Suddenly, ordinary days felt extraordinary. The breeze carried a strange electricity, and the silence of night seemed to whisper secrets. Have you ever stood outside just moments before a storm, when the wind stills and the air crackles with tension and mystery? That was the sensation these women experienced. Every heartbeat felt amplified, every glance over the shoulder more urgent. The skies appeared normal, yet hinted at an impending transformation. Not just in the clouds, but in the very fabric of reality. Unbeknownst to them, their existence had become the epicenter of a spiritual war. Their smiles, laughter, and grace were drawing angels from the heights of glory. The invisible barrier between the eternal and the earthly was thinning, and something within them sensed that life was on the precipice of transformation. Was it fate? Temptation? Or had they unknowingly become characters in a story written long before their birth? Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. But what unfolds when heavenly beings attempt to force a season that God never intended? The world itself seemed to hold its breath. Animals grew restless. The wind hummed, as if creation braced for an inevitable collision. The women continued their lives, unaware that destiny, dark, divine, and irreversible, was rapidly approaching. The angels were acutely aware of the treacherous path they were treading, lit not by holy fire, but by the flames of rebellion. They knew the line they were approaching was not merely forbidden, but sacred, created as divine messengers, warriors of light, and servants of the Most High. Every fiber of their being was designed for obedience, praise, and purity. And yet, everything had changed. The longer they gazed upon earth, the more they hesitated in their duties and dreamt of things they were never meant to desire. Each time the thought of abandoning heaven crossed their minds, a surge of guilt washed over them. They remembered the celestial courts, the glory of God's throne, and the honor of bearing His light. But another thought arose, stronger, more seductive. What if there was something more? What if humans were not lesser beings, but a gateway into experiences angels could never comprehend unless they crossed the line? Unthinkable questions echoed. What does it feel like to love with the depth of human longing? Could they feel the warmth of mortal touch, the ache of joy and heartbreak intertwined? Would they finally understand what it means to be truly known, not as a servant, but as a lover? Their hearts, once filled with the light of God's presence, began to harbor shadows of yearning. Is it possible for a being of heaven to love something more than God? Could a heart designed to reflect divine worship be twisted toward earthly pleasure? The scriptures offer a chilling reminder in Isaiah 14:12-14, where Lucifer declared, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." Desire that deviates from God's will is the seed from which all rebellion springs. The angels stood at the precipice, torn between their divine purpose and their newfound longing. The pull was no longer just a feeling, but a force that threatened to drag them from the heavens forever. With each passing day, the allure grew stronger, and more angels found themselves unable to resist the growing fascination with humanity. What began as silent curiosity became a clandestine gathering. One by one, they began to watch the earth below, not out of duty, but out of desire. Laughter around fires, gentle embraces, tears shed under moonlight. These were emotions unknown to them, and their resolve crumbled with each sunrise. They had witnessed the dawn of creation, watched as God spoke galaxies into existence, and scattered stars like dust. They had sung as the oceans were carved and mountains raised. Yet, all that glory faded in their hearts. Eclipsed by an uncontrollable yearning, each angel stood at the crossroads. Remain loyal to their divine assignment, or surrender to the promise of a love they could never truly possess. What makes the forbidden so irresistible? Could it be that the boundaries God sets test the deepest truths of our hearts? Heaven and earth were never meant to intertwine. The realms were designed to remain separate, each with its own laws and purpose. But the angels were willing to abandon everything. Celestial warriors, eternal messengers, servants of the Most High, for a fleeting chance at mortal love. Could they even comprehend the cost? This was no small decision, no act of curiosity, but an act of rebellion. The Book of Enoch tells us that 200 angels, led by Samjaza, made a pact, swore an oath, and bound by fear and desire, vowed to descend to earth together, ensuring that none would face judgment alone. But judgment was inevitable. Their choice would alter not only their destiny, but the world, birthing giants, destruction, and a wickedness that would grieve God, as Genesis 6-5 states. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The heavens were about to shake, the earth to groan under the weight of corruption, and the angels, captivated by human beauty, were about to learn a truth that echoes through eternity. No matter how compelling the reason, some divine laws are never meant to be broken. When these angels, no longer messengers of God, but outcasts set foot upon the earth, a strange enchantment rippled through the natural world, not the kind that brings healing or hope, but something far more dangerous, a beauty that pulls you under like a riptide. Imagine the most breathtaking person you've ever seen, now magnified 1,000 times, more radiant, flawless, unearthly. That's what they looked like, but their beauty was supernatural, not merely visual. They didn't walk, but glided through the air with impossible grace. Their voices were melodies, pure and seductive, resonating in souls, not just ears. They wore the light, not just reflected it. Their presence dulled everything around them. Flowers leaned toward them. Birds fell silent. The air shimmered. When they entered villages, time slowed. Farmers dropped tools. Mothers paused mid-sentence. Children forgot games. All eyes turned to these dazzling figures. Resisting their gaze was like staring into the sun, brilliant and painful, yet impossible to resist. But women felt something awaken within, an ache, a hunger, a fire with no name. This wasn't ordinary attraction, but destiny, a spell. What would you do if someone beyond your understanding stepped into your life and made you feel like you were the only person in the universe? Could you resist? Would you even want to? These were not just striking strangers, but perfection wrapped in mystery, walking among mortals like living dreams. Their skin glowed like moonlit silver, their eyes shimmered with starlight, yet held knowledge older than the earth, and their smiles melted hearts. But unease stirred, because behind that divine smile, something was wrong. They were beautiful, yes, but their beauty was laced with shadow, their charm too smooth, too flawless. 2 Corinthians 11:14 warns, Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. And if the prince of darkness can appear beautiful, how much more deceptive could these fallen beings be? Their smiles concealed ancient secrets. Their mesmerizing eyes held heavenly rebellion and the coldness of immortality. The women felt drawn like moths to a flame, caught between awe and helplessness. How could they resist someone who glowed with celestial light, knew their thoughts, fears, longings without words, and offered impossible, intoxicating promises that no human could match? But deep down, the world flinched. Nature knew, heaven knew, and soon even the women would learn. This was no fairy tale, but the beginning of something dark, something that heaven would not let stand. Here the story truly unsettles the soul. The frightening part wasn't just the angels' actions, but the transformation in the women. The longer they stayed near these fallen beings, the more they changed. Initially subtle, a strange glow in their eyes, a shift in their energy. They carried a presence that others sensed but couldn't explain. The divinity the angels held seeped into them, altering them body, mind, and spirit. They no longer saw the world the same way. Daily life, once comforting, now seemed hollow. The touch of a human husband, the earthly routine, none satisfied them anymore. They had tasted something forbidden and were forever changed. Normal men seemed small, insignificant. Their eyes, once open to simple joys, were now fixed on something more dazzling and dangerous. Was this love or possession? Were these women chosen or simply being used? The fallen angels knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't pick at random. From heaven, they had marked the ones they desired most, the radiant, alluring, and spirited. Once they arrived, they used their powers, divine knowledge, charm, perfect love, to become everything these women had ever dreamed of. They whispered promises only angels could know. They became the embodiment of fantasy. But what appeared a dream was the opening act of a nightmare. It looked like romance, felt like destiny, but was a divine violation. Each time one of these celestial rebels took a woman as his wife, the fabric of the universe trembled. Heaven felt the breach, earth felt the consequence. These were not mere marriages, but unholy covenants, forged without God's blessing, built on disobedience and desire, and the ripple effects reached far beyond what anyone could see. Genesis 6-4 offers a chilling glimpse. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. When the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown. But what kind of heroes were they? Saviors or monsters? Because the true horror was still to come. The children born from these forbidden unions were not ordinary. They were giants, titans, beings with power that no human could control and no angel could redeem. These offspring, half angel, half human, would turn the world into a place of chaos and terror. The question remains, what happens when divine beings cross sacred lines? When love becomes lust and blessings become curses? The answer lies in the next chapter of the story, where these children, the Nephilim, rise from the wombs of mortal women and bring upon the world a darkness that even heaven can no longer ignore. Now let me reveal the terrifying truth about the offspring of these forbidden unions, the Nephilim. These were not ordinary children. They were the cursed fruit of angelic rebellion and human vulnerability. From the moment they took their first breath, it was clear they did not belong to either world. They were too large for cradles, too strong for swaddling clothes, and they did not stop growing. Their bodies surged with power, and their hunger grew just as fast. Imagine a child born from divine power and human flesh, a being whose growth didn't slow with time, but accelerated. These weren't just big kids. They were giants, towering over trees, their shadows swallowing entire streets. When a Nephilim walked, the very earth trembled beneath their massive feet. When they cried, the sound echoed like thunder rolling through mountains. When they shouted in rage, villages heard it from miles away. They were terrifyingly strong, strong enough to tear through stone walls, to uproot forests, to crush armies without effort. But their strength was only half the danger. These giants inherited their father's celestial abilities: strength, perception, power, but none of their divine restraint. And from their mothers they gained emotion, jealousy, pride, anger, without the human conscience to tame it. Imagine the emotional outburst of a toddler. Now imagine that toddler, the size of a house, with the strength to level cities. This was not fantasy. It was a waking nightmare. the world was suddenly home to beings too powerful to control and too immature to understand mercy. Have you ever wondered? So, to bring it all together, we've journeyed into a dark and fascinating corner of ancient lore, exploring the forbidden love between angels and humans, and the devastating consequences that followed. We've seen how even beings of light can succumb to temptation, and how choices, especially those born of desire outside of divine will, can ripple through eternity, birthing unimaginable chaos. Ultimately, this story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of discernment, of honoring boundaries, and of the enduring strength of divine laws. What are your thoughts on all of this? Did any particular part of the story resonate with you? I'd love to hear your interpretations and any questions you might have in the comments below. Let's get a conversation going. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the mysteries of the past, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future explorations of the hidden and the unexplained. We're just getting started. Thanks for watching.